Please allow me to start by welcoming you all. So welcome all. My name is Gareth James Lloyd and I'm a Senior Advisor at the UNEP-DHI Partnership, where one of our focus areas is on water quality. I'm going to be the facilitator of this webinar today with technical support from Maya Batule, who's also working at the UNEP-DHI Partnership. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about who we are and what we do at the partnership, then please feel free to check out the link shown here, but of course not right now, please. The main purpose of this webinar series is to raise awareness on the importance of water quality and to introduce participants to the main challenges of water quality in terms of water resources, as well as ways in which these challenges can be addressed. The first webinar in this series presented global goals and some of the lessons learned in water quality with cases both from Europe and India. The second webinar, which was last week, went into a little bit more detail on some of the key challenges in terms of the impact on water quality and human well-being and vice versa, as well as looking at water scarcity and climate change. This third webinar is looking at frameworks for global governance, and on the agenda today we have Jan Hassing, who's a Senior Policy Advisor at DHI. Jan is going to be looking at how to develop and apply water governance frameworks that take into account water quality. We also have Lisbeth Flindt Jørgensen, who's a senior expert at GEOS, the Geological Survey of Denmark and Greenland. Lisbeth is going to be telling us about some of the key issues with groundwater and water quality and how they can be addressed. And finally, rounding off the presentations today, we're going to have Miriam Feilberg, who's a Senior Advisor at DANVA, and that is the Danish Water and Wastewater Association. And Miriam's going to be talking about how to improve public awareness and engagement in water quality management. Each of these presentations is going to be approximately 10 minutes, and we should have enough time for one or two questions immediately after each one. There should also be some time to take some additional questions, if you have any, at the end of the three presentations, so we'll try to allow some time for that. In the panel on the right of your screen, you should be able to see a box for submitting questions, so please feel free to make use of that as we move through. All of these water webinars are recorded and made publicly available on YouTube, and you can also access them through our UNEP-DHI.org website. Without further ado, I'll ask Maya to pass the microphone over to Jan, who will make the first of the presentations. So over to you, Jan, as soon as you can kickstart your computer. And
yep.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much for this introduction, Gareth. As mentioned, I'm a Senior Policy Advisor at DHI, and what I'm going to tell you about today is some of the basics of water quality governance frameworks. You certainly need a framework whenever you want to manage water quality. I mean, it's a huge area, and you need some ways to go about it, and some limitations for what you want to do and can do. Looking at the water governance, there are several dimensions involved. There's certainly a social dimension, which deals with the equitable use. There's an economic dimension, and you could say that deals with the efficient use. There's a political dimension, which is about equal democratic opportunities. And there's an environmental dimension which deals with for instance, sustainable use. To give you a few examples of the economic dimensions of water quality, we could take a look at it in relation to irrigated agriculture. Now, around the world, high salt content in irrigation water makes approximately 7,300 square kilometers per year unsuitable for production. So it's huge figures we are talking about. And today, as it is, 20% of the world's irrigated lands are affected, and 20% that is corresponding to the area of France, for instance. So if we are looking at a global economic loss due to salt accumulation, then it comes close to 27 billion US dollars per year. If we exemplify the social dimensions of water quality, then we could say that the unfortunate fact is that 2.2 million people, they die prematurely each year due to unsuitable water quality. And here we are mainly talking about bacterial contamination. And if you count the lost healthy life years, then it amounts to 73 million per year. Losing both people and healthy life years means a lot to the burdens on the community health services. It reduces the productivity, or you're losing skilled workers, and there will be a loss of livelihoods. Now, a management framework, one universally applicable management framework is what we call the integrated water resources management. Now, this was defined in 1992 and came out of the real process. So the IWM is a process which promotes the coordinated we will jump to the next slide here and go into the framework, take a look at the details of the integrated water resources management. Now there's the three different parts of this structure, which is the enabling environment, the institutional roles, and the management instruments. Now, within the enabling environment, we are talking about that framework needs to have a number of policies, needs to have legislation, needs to look at financing and incentive structures. Within the institutional roles, we have, we need an organizational framework, we need institutional capacity building, and we need a number of different management instruments which the institutions should be able to handle. Now, if we look at the guiding principles for the policy development, then we could say that very often used guiding principles is that you need to prevent pollution rather than treating the symptoms. You often use the precautionary principle, the polluter pays principle, and you need to apply realistic standards and regulations. Also, you can choose between economic and regulatory instruments, but you will most often find that there's a need for some kind of a balance between these instruments. Now, the water quality management is best done at the lowest appropriate level, and it's best done with the basin as the water quality management unit. Now, I'll tell you a little about a case of polluted drinking water. Now, what you see here is the Rhine River running right through Europe. And what happened here was that in 1986 there was the worst pollution for several decades. There was a fire in an agrochemical warehouse near Basel, where 30 tons of agricultural chemicals was washed into the Rhine, and a 70-kilometer red toxic trail moved through 4 countries. Now, as you may know, the Rhine is used very much for drinking water all along its course. Now, it had to be closed as a drinking water source for 18 days, and all fish life was wiped out. Now, if we take a look at what kind of lessons were actually coming out of this chemical spill, or was there something done as a consequence of this spill? Now, there was a lot of consideration on are states responsible for the conduct of their nationals? Yes, they are responsible for the institutions, but not for the persons. Now, there were some new regulations being issued, fire protection for stocks of hazardous material, and also EU followed up on control of major accident hazards. Now, the lessons learned from water quality management is that it is really only meaningful when it's organized within an IWM framework, where interdependent water quantity and quality are included on an equal basis, and where cross-sectoral coordination is a basic requirement. Now, when you go about the strategic water quality management, trying to create a framework, you need to follow a certain strategy. You need to identify the water quality issues. What's the problem? You need to analyze the strengths and weaknesses of your institutions. You need to look into the categories of water quality issues. You need to prioritize these, which are most important to start on. You need to identify required management interventions and the short and long-term objectives. A few further lessons: you need to include the regulations, bylaws, and guides. You need to look at water quality objectives and emission standards. You need to decide on the use of economic instruments and the extent. You need to look into monitoring systems, water quality modeling, prediction of impacts, and environmental impact assessments. So, thank you very much for listening in.
Many thanks for that, Jan. I think it was good just to capture that list of lessons learned at the end. I think the idea there is that people can pick up on that and maybe do some further reading. In terms of water quality, I'd like to invite you to say a few words about what countries are currently doing about water quality and how that's on the agenda. Does it, to what extent it features in the SDGs? I think we talked a little bit about that in the first webinar, but for those that missed it, maybe you'd just like to say a few words about that.
Yeah. when we talk about water quality and how the benefits, what kind of benefits comes out of a good water governance, then if we look at the SDGs and look at the most direct benefits.
Sorry for interrupting, Jan. I should probably say that the SDGs are the new UN Sustainable Development Goals, which pick up and carry on where the Millennium Development Goals left off, and they will run from 2015 to 2030. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry. Oh, thank you very much for that interjection. So, where you have a direct benefit on the SDGs, that would be in what is called SDG 3, which talks about ensuring healthy lives. SDG number 6 deals with water and sanitation for all. And here as well, there's a direct benefit of a good water quality governance. And finally, there's a very direct benefit when we look at combating climate change impacts.
Great, thanks for that. So the idea is that countries can pick up on these goals and the targets within those goals to further their management of water quality and maybe get some help and assistance on what to do.
Yeah, my point is that it's important to look at how water and water quality and the good governance is necessary in order to make progress on certain parts of the SDG.
Super. Many thanks for that, Jan. Without further ado, I'll ask Maya to please pass the microphone over to Lisbeth. And just to remind you, while Maya's doing that, Lisbeth is going to be telling us about some of the key issues with groundwater and water quality. So over to you, Lisbeth.
Well, thank you, Garrett. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to participate in these webinars. It's very exciting. As you already introduced me, I'm working as a geologist at the Geological Survey of Denmark and Greenland, where I've been working for quite some years with groundwater management in a research context, and before that I have been working at different level in Danish administration with the same issues. I'm going to tell you a little bit about groundwater and the links between groundwater and water quality and how we can intervene to protect groundwater.
Lisbeth, just while you're lining that up, I'd just like to jump in and remind the participants that in the top right-hand corner there's a question box. They're very, very welcome to use that for any kind of issues that come to mind and they'd like to have our experts discuss here. Thank you.
Yes. First, I think we should define groundwater so that we agree on what we're talking about. Very quickly, so as surface water, groundwater is of course a natural part of the water cycle, and groundwater is only available if the geology is permeable or fractured so that it can allow precipitation to infiltrate and recharge the groundwater in aquifers in different depths. Groundwater is also present in the aquifers from other areas where it has recharged, as groundwater flow is a very important mechanism in the aquifers. And as it can also be seen from the figure, groundwater in some cases also discharge into lakes or wetlands, the rivers, or even the oceans. Next then, what should we be aware of when we consider groundwater? And in this aspect we are of course talking of groundwater as a drinking water supply primarily, but of course also for irrigation and for industrial use. What is groundwater contamination? Well, the definition and perception may vary depending on what the desired use of the groundwater is, and as the groundwater pollution is not always observable, the groundwater may be contaminated but not explored, and then we're not aware of that it is contaminated. Secondly, we might not see it, as many harmful substances are not visible and we only get aware of them when we analyze. In this aspect, it's also very important to state that bad quality of water is not necessarily contamination. There's some naturally occurring substances in especially groundwater as arsenic or fluoride that can cause serious health problems, but these are not to consider as contamination as such. And then I think we should think of contamination as the presence of an unwanted and identified human-imposed substance in unacceptable concentrations, at least in this context. What can then harm groundwater quality? Well, overall, the same things that can threaten the quality of surface waters can also threaten the groundwater quality. In general, groundwater contamination is very closely linked to the land use, making the planning and regulation of this very critical to groundwater quality. Likewise, the handling and disposal of different hazardous chemicals in the environment must be considered and, of course, managed. Contaminating inputs to the aquatic environment might be intentional, like by design or by neglect, or they might be unintentional, like side effects or accidents, as we just heard Jens told us about. Interaction with surface water may be complex and not constant, as exchange between rivers and groundwater may release pollution from groundwater to the stream, or maybe the other way around. As mentioned, a wide range of activities can threaten the groundwater quality. Probably one of the most significant threats towards groundwater quality in many areas worldwide is intensified agriculture, as both nutrients and pesticides can leach to the groundwater in unacceptable concentrations. Other activities known to cause serious groundwater pollutions are mining industries and other industrial activities that might leak environmental damaging substances into the aquatic environment, and this includes, of course, the groundwater. Also leaking from contaminated sites, from sewers that are not tight, from tanks, from landfill pits, as well as basins containing harmful substances are serious concerns to be considered. Finally, in local communities, the lacking of separation of wastewater and drinking water can cause serious health problems. And human waste can also pose a serious threat towards drinking water supply, as for example, open defecation can result in leaching of dangerous pathogenic bacteria to both surface water or groundwater used as drinking water supplies. When looking into groundwater contamination, what should we then consider? What do we need to know something about? First of all, where is the groundwater? We must consider the hydrogeology. Where is the groundwater? How does it move in the aquifer, and how much is there of it? We do not need to know this in details, but at least to have an idea on what we're talking about. Next, there's the geochemistry, that is the natural chemistry of the groundwater. What is naturally dissolved in it? Is it harmful, and can it interact with potential intruding contaminants? Solute transport is also important to consider. How will potential contaminants spread in the aquifer, and how will they interact with the natural geochemistry in it? Could more harmful substances potentially be formed? And last, natural degradation processes. They are also important to consider. Maybe there is some potential for degradation of different substances. As an example, we could mention nitrate that can be oxidized to harmless substances in the soil if it has sufficiently reduction capacity. There are also examples of bacteria that can degrade some of substances, and we even have evidence of bacteria assimilating to degrade pesticides. But it's very important to realize that the capacity of the soil to do this is only limited, and we should not use this as an excuse to pollute. What we then do to protect the groundwater? Well, there are more levels to look at this issue on. There's the local, the regional, the national, and the international. On the local level, what can the individual or the local community do? Well, first of all, use your water wise. Do not spill your water, and do not use more than absolutely necessary. Reuse water when it's possible, and use smart technologies as intelligent irrigation. If you use a lot of water deriving from groundwater, you require more pumping and this can lead to enhanced contamination by dragging pollutions to the aquifer. Another backside of this is that overexploitation of aquifers can result in quality problems in terms of saltwater intrusion, and that can be from deeper lying layers, or it could be from the sea in coastal areas. You could also mobilize undesired minerals from the soils when oxygen enters the aquifer instead of water. Proper separation of wastewater from clean drinking water is very important, as already mentioned. You must be sure to install separate and safe pipe or secure wells against inflowing contaminated water. Dig them far away from wastewater outlets. Another issue is abandoned wells. These can be defined as scars to the aquifer, and they must be filled with clean soils, clay at best, to avoid contamination bleeding through these scars to the groundwater aquifers. As mentioned, proper handling of hazardous substances that could potentially threaten the groundwater quality is also extremely important. And last, proper waste disposal. Waste should be sorted and reused rather than dropped or landfilled. If we then look at the larger scale, the regional, the national, or the international, it's very important to remember that groundwater does not follow administrative borders between municipalities, between regions, or even between states. This calls for common efforts and shared strategies on all the issues mentioned on the previous slides, and this is to prevent contamination spreading from one community to another. And this calls for cooperation as well as understanding and acceptance of individual needs. Next, this calls for a very strong legal framework on larger scales. It could be an agreed strategy on sharing of resources. It could be registration of wells and on pumping. It could be abstraction, licensing. It could be water levies, etc. And then finally, if you have a law, you need to enforce it. It is essential that the authorities check that the legislation implemented is also working in practice and that rules are complied with. I'll give you a little example on how things could work out. We are going to visit a little island in Denmark called Tunø. It's very small. It only has around 150 inhabitants, but during summertime there are much more people. At this island, it was identified in the 1990s that the drinking water contained far too much nitrate. It was far beyond the international quality standards of 50 milligrams per liter. There were no other source of drinking water supply at the island, so the problem had to be solved locally. There were some farmers on the island which were having intensive or growing intensively, and actually volunteer agreement were entered with these local farmers who in fact actually also drank the water from the water supply company. And they went into an agreement on doing less intensive agricultural practice in the recharge area of the wells. They were actually compensated by a small extra levy paid by the water users that included all the habitants, and as I mentioned, it was also the farmers themselves that drank this water. And actually in 20 years the water quality was improved to an acceptable level of nitrate. As you can see from the graph in the bottom of the slide, and to the right you can see the blue areas should illustrate the cleaner drinking water from 1990 in the top through 2000 and until 2010. Another example is the general reduction in application of nutrients per acre that the Danish farmer has to comply with by law and by European directives. And this has slightly wise during the last 25 years resulted in better surface water qualities as well as groundwater quality in large areas of Denmark. If we are to consider groundwater as a drinking water resource, what should we then take in mind? As I said, groundwater is not available everywhere, but where it is, it's usually a good alternative or supplement to surface waters for most purposes, and that goes for drinking water, for irrigation, and for industry. There are of course quality issues, but also there also are these with surface waters. In some cases, the soil can actually degrade the different substances to some extent, as mentioned. It might be more clean than surface water, and that especially goes for bacteria. And when it is, it might be more safe and cheaper to use, as you should not clean the water to get drinking water quality. Of course, you need to put some costs into getting the water out of the surface or the subsurface, but that should be less than actually cleaning it. But again, it's very important to make sure that there's not some dangerous substances in it, as arsenic, which has actually worldwide caused some serious problems because people were not aware of the high concentration of arsenic. And then, in the end, measures to secure the quality is very necessary. So that was about it from me. Thank you for listening.
Yes, many thanks for that, Lisbeth, for giving us that overview. It was, yeah, very interesting. One of the questions that's come in is all about, let me just see, how does climate change affect groundwater? Would you like to say a few words about that?
Yes, I guess climate changes affect groundwater in some of the same ways as it affects surface water. At least in Denmark, we've been calculating this with a large hydrological model, and it looks that with the climate changes we can expect in Denmark, which implies that we will have more heavy summer rains, and we will have in total less summer rains during the summer actually, and the summer will have a longer durance. When heavy rains fall, there is not time for the water to infiltrate to the aquifers. It will disappear via overflow to streams, etc. So we will actually have less groundwater recharge during these events, and it could actually mean that the groundwater will be there will be less and less groundwater in some areas. But then we also know that the precipitation patterns will of course be different in different areas of the country. Yes.
Thank you. One second question that's just come in is what could be an example of the intelligent irrigation that you referred to on one of your slides?
Yes. An intelligent way of doing irrigation is, first of all, not to do sprinkling during daytime and during sunshine, because then most of the water will actually evaporate. Another example that is used in quite some countries, especially in the very hot climates, is dripping systems where you have tubes lying on the ground, dripping on each individual plant, or in the rows where the plants are. So that's examples of intelligent irrigation.
Okay, super. Many thanks again for that. I'll ask Maya to pass the microphone and the presentation over to Miriam. And just to remind you, Miriam will be talking about how to improve public awareness and engagement in water quality management. And I think that Miriam will be using Denmark as a case study from which to bridge out. Over to you, Miriam.
Thank you so much, Gareth. Yes, I will use Denmark as a case study, but I also have some examples from other countries. As Gareth said in the beginning, I work at DANVA. This is the Danish Water and Wastewater Association, an organization for utilities in Denmark. So the members are responsible for water supply and sanitation to most major cities in Denmark. And they have many activities related to public participation, an area that I have also previously been working in, and which is very important related to water quality improvements. As you can see from this slide, public participation is a cornerstone in the IWM principles. It says here, participatory approach, that water development and management should be based on a participatory approach involving users, planners and policymakers at all levels. So this is the one that Jan Hassing also referred to from 1992, but it is actually still valid. In the Sustainable Development Goals we just heard about, adopted last month by the United Nations to kind of guide development matters for the next 15 years. There's also a reference in the Goal 6, ensure availability and sustainable management and water supply and sanitation for all, which includes a target on implementation of integrated water resources management at all levels, which includes public participation. So I will present an example of the importance of public participation and public awareness on water management when it comes to reaching desired targets. In Denmark, it has for many years been a political goal to lower water consumption and reduce leakages in the distribution networks, which is actually also quite important for water quality, because when we have leakages, we see poor water coming into the piping system, and we also see polluted water coming from the piping system and into the groundwater and the surface waters. Among the factors that we can see here is regulation. You need to have the policies, the laws and the bylaws in place. You need the relevant technology, pumps, pipes, equipment, all technical solutions must be there. Price systems are important. People must be able to cover the costs, and also the revenues must be collected. And then finally, it is important that in order to achieve targets, that people are involved, they are aware, they have knowledge about what is going to happen around them, and are educated in order to participate in the contribution for the improved water management. So you can say it's important that we are all engaged and understand what to do to improve water management, to improve water quality, but the mechanisms and how we are doing this varies from country to country. I've been working in some different countries, for instance in Zambia, where water stakeholder advisory groups represent all stakeholders like farmers, industries, communities, and is a vehicle for discussion of challenges and solutions. We see in many basin organizations, regional, transboundary, that they also act as a framework for multi-stakeholder participation to ensure that knowledge and participation from all groups are there. In some cases, it may also be important to facilitate organizations like water users, associations, and to secure that vulnerable groups actually are able to participate. And what we see often in Denmark is that the existing organizations like the property owners are being used as a means to reach out to communities and different stakeholder groups. They know the local issues and challenges, and I think we also saw this in the example from Lisbeth, from this small island, where the farmers were working quite actively also to secure better groundwater in this area. There are different stages of participation, from public announcement, where you're more just telling people what is going to happen, over consultation, joint decision making, and also supporting community initiatives to make sure that local communities are able to participate. And you cannot say that this is better than that. You have to look at the different situations and maybe consider now for yourself what is relevant for you. Where would you have to put most effort into the different means of public participation? But we can say that it is generally acknowledged that citizens stand stronger when public participation is legally demanded. An example of this is the Aarhus Convention from the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. It empowers the citizens with the right to access information easily, to participate efficiently in the decision-making, and also to seek justice when their rights are violated. And the purpose of this is overall to protect the human rights of the citizens in order to also to live in a healthy environment. In the European Union, the Water Framework Directive that we've heard about before in these webinars builds on this, but it can also be relevant in countries beyond the European Union. In many like former Soviet Union countries, the Aarhus Convention has been used as a vehicle to improve environment. And I have met representatives of local Aarhus Convention centers in countries like Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Kazakhstan, and they're actually able to use the convention as a vehicle to improve decision making and also to improve more democratic environmental governance. And well, it's not a lot of countries in the world that's covered by this, but still others can learn from the examples. In Denmark, we have some of the highest water prices, and the water price is also important to lower water consumption. To reach the high water prices and to make this publicly acceptable and politically kind of viable, it's really important that people understand the needs and what is the outcome of this. As you can see, Denmark is not the highest water price in Europe, but it is among the highest prices. But people generally accept this because they understand the value of lower water use for environment, for water quality, and also for secure drinking water supply. And we can see that this has led to a substantial consumption overall in water use in Denmark, and this has been combined also with a growth in the gross domestic product at the same time. In Denmark, we can see that a very high environmental awareness goes hand in hand also with the high level of water awareness, which is really important to secure the water quality, healthy water also in the environment. So people do not litter, they do not pollute the water, the surface waters they see. They are very keen on making sure that they report leakages and overall contribute to a healthy environment. And we have seen that in some cases, like 40% of the results are actually due to high awareness from people who are working on this. And in many countries where I've seen just a little bit more awareness, high awareness on this can actually lead to much better environment. But is this then only relevant for Europe? I think that the Danish companies and organizations have experiences from many countries where they have contributed and used some of the same experiences. This is a picture from Dhaka in Bangladesh, where a Danish company is working on upgrading the water supply system. And this goes hand in hand, the technical upgrade goes hand in hand with also higher water prices. But it has been generally accepted by the population in this area because they see the benefits. They pay more for the water, but then they don't need to pay for drinking water. They can drink the tap water. They are more healthy. They don't have to pay for medicine because they get sick from the poor drinking water. And this has not been possible if awareness raising and public participation has not been elements in this project. These are just some very short examples of different opportunities to participate and to educate. You can do this at school levels for kindergartens. You can have a demonstration of the water cycle and the different elements in the water cycle. You can look into information for communities. This one, for instance, is about taking shorter showers and is an overall effort to reduce water consumption in Copenhagen to 100 liters per person per day, which we are actually very, very close at. It's also important to look at not only households, but also the public institutions when you are organizing campaigns. They are responsible for like 7% of the water volume and have a huge potential for saving water, up to 10–15%. If the people working in different institutions are also aware of this and the gains that they can have, and it's important that there are also some different incentives so that they also get part of the savings. Climate change adaptation is another area where it's really important that communities are involved in finding the solutions and looking to also improve water environment. And we have a number of very good cases on this, where communities have been able to identify better solutions to make room for water in case of stormwater management, or they can propose new solutions related to local infiltration of rainwater, or using rainwater for watering gardens, which is very cost-saving for the treatment plants. And we have also the example from Copenhagen, where awareness has been integrated into climate change adaptation and cloudburst management plans, so that people fully understand the needs for them to contribute and also understand what has happened and what is happening in the city with all the new climate change adaptation structures that are being built. So I just want to thank you for listening to this. You're always welcome to write to me for more information, and you can also take a look at some of these web pages if you want to see some more of the cases that I have described here. Thank you.
Many thanks for that, Miriam. Very useful. One of the questions that's come in is that it says Denmark and the European are a collection of well-developed countries, of course, and the question is, to what extent are the Aarhus Convention and the Water Framework Directive experiences relevant outside the European Union?
Yeah, I gave some examples of this. So the Aarhus Convention actually covers the whole of the UNEP-DHI region, which is also the former Soviet region. Not all countries have implemented. Russia, for instance, haven't implemented the convention. But I think also outside this region, I think other countries can learn from what has been achieved through the Aarhus Convention, and maybe look into, is it possible to copy some of the conditions that are established in the Aarhus Convention. It is for now, it's not open to others, but this doesn't mean that you're not able to copy some of the conditions and the legal instruments in the Aarhus Convention. And we have seen, for instance, on transboundary water management that the UN Convention on Shared Watercourses also actually started within the UNEP-DHI region and was later opened to more parties. So I think learn about the Aarhus Convention and what can be gained from having a strong legal instrument for public participation.
Great, thanks for that, Miriam. One additional question that's come in for, I think it's for you. Yeah, it is how to generate water quality awareness in large communities, for example, in places like India, and within a short space of time. What could be done there?
Well, that is not the most easy thing to do, I would say. If you really need to target large communities, it's probably through awareness campaigns. If it has to be in a relatively short time, then you cannot have the time to work on the schools and developing education systems. But then you have to find ways that is working in India and in the culture, and it can be through media and web pages and other campaigns. And the utilities can be very, very instrumental in promoting these campaigns. What we can see is also important is that people really understand and that there are some incentives. So when people are saving water, for instance, they also save money because of the water bill. So this is in a short span. In a longer term, I think it's really efficient to work with schools and ground schools, secondary schools, to make them understand, because they will share the information with the parents and they will also teach them to be better water managers.
Many thanks for that. Time is running, I realize that, but we have a number of very interesting and relevant questions that I think might be of benefit for the broader group to hear the answers to. So I'd like to use a couple of minutes just opening up the floor to pose those questions. The first question will be to Jan, the second question will be to Miriam, and the third question will be to Lisbeth. So I'll read out all the three questions, and then Jan, you'll have a chance to put a bit of thought to it before answering without being put too much on the spot. So Jan, how can mandated institutions, for example those focusing on environment, energy and agriculture with conflicting visions, how can they work together to ensure and secure water quality? To Miriam, about water pricing, how do we address water as a human right which might be in conflict with pricing issues, particularly in places where high prices are prohibitive for the poor? For Lisbeth, the question for you is, how can groundwater and focusing on groundwater contribute to achieving the sustainable development goals that countries are now about to start working towards? So Jan, if you could unmute your mic and say a few words, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for the question, which is about the institutions. How can they work together to ensure the water quality? Now, there are several examples of, mechanisms where institutions can meet and work together. The most common one is if they establish some kind of water resources commission with the participation of the various institutions and some key stakeholders, and that commission can then discuss, and they can between themselves solve conflicts and mandate the various actions to the various institutions. But
in your presentation as well, of course, you referred to the IWM framework, Integrated Water Resources Management Framework. I guess that also provides an opportunity if that's in place in a particular geography. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. All these basics have to be more or less in place because the institutions have to be in agreement about what the long-term goals are. Will we try to keep a very good water quality in this or that stream, or would we rather use it as an open sewer? And what are the priorities? And the institutions need to be in agreement about the priorities.
Many thanks for that, Jan. If you could just mute your microphone, Jan, and open up your microphone, Miriam, so you can say a few words about water pricing, please.
Yes, thank you so much. I think it's really a relevant question. In countries like in Denmark, it has also been discussed, but what we can see is that in more developed countries, people can afford to pay for water. Those who doesn't want to pay for it, it's small industries and so, and this is not really relevant. But of course, I realize that in developing countries with more poor people, this can really be an issue. I think it's important that you kind of distinguish between paying for water as such and paying for the delivery of water. And what we are arguing is not that people should pay a very high cost for the water, but the price you pay should cover for the cost of delivering water to people. And what we can see in general is that when there's not piped water, when there are not good sustainable solutions, those who actually pay the most for water are the poor people, because they are living in undeveloped neighborhoods. They have to pay for the water that they're buying from local water vendors, and they have to buy the bottled water. So in general, and this was really the case in this example from Dhaka, they have the largest benefits when better pipe solutions are being implemented. But of course, there are some people where it can really be a challenge, and you can work with different solutions. You can work with some funds. You can maybe secure that there's some solidarity schemes, or you can say, I think those UN campaigns saying something like at least 20 or 30 liters. So maybe you can get the first 20 or 50 or whatever liters you take in that area as the minimum that you really need to get. That you can get that for free, and then you start paying from after that. But if the price is then based on a cost recovery system, then it also means that others will pay for this. So there's a kind of taxation or solidarity mechanism. But on the other hand, this may also be relevant because, of course, everyone needs to have good drinking water.
Great, many thanks for that. And if I could ask you to mute your mic, please, Miriam, and quickly move over to Lisbeth, if you could say a few words.
Yes, I think that groundwater could contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals, both number 3, which is about the healthy lives, and number 6, which is about availability of water. And of course, this only goes for areas where groundwater is actually present. And it is mainly on a resource issue if the resources are running out in areas, and there are actually available groundwater resources, which we actually see in some areas in Africa, for example, where people are not aware of the groundwater underneath their feet, or they might think that it's not worth exploring because the quality is too bad. Then it could go. We could do some investigation to find out what is the groundwater quality, and it can be used for some purposes. Should it be cleaned? Is it easier to clean this than the surface water regarding the quality? And of course, to be aware of these natural substances that can be extremely harmful, like arsenic and fluoride. In general, it could supply you with more water in areas where it's present, and it could supply you with water of a better quality in some cases.
Great, many thanks, Lisbeth. I think I'm cognizant of time. We're nearly up to the hour mark. I'm going to close for the questions there, although there were more very interesting and relevant ones. If you have any burning issues, please send an email to Maya, and she'll try and help and make sure you get a good response. We're always looking to improve our work on water quality, so we'd be very grateful if you could use a couple of minutes to fill out the feedback survey form that we're going to be sending out to you, together with a link to this webinar, which will also be made available via YouTube, which can be accessed through our website. The next webinar in this series is due to take place on Wednesday, October 28th. The headline of this topic is going to be water quality interventions, with a specific focus on technical solutions. And as usual, we're going to have quite limited space for participants, so please feel free to provisionally book your space and by following this link here. Which is also available from our website. And finally, please allow me to conclude by saying thank you once again to all the presenters and to yourselves for taking the time to join us. We wish you all a very good morning, a good afternoon, or of course a good evening. Thank you.